this is Kirk.
And this is Byrd. It's the Kirk and Byrd Show. And we are finally officially legit with our picks segment, y'all. We have with us today Virginia Preps, Matt Hatfield with us. He's a real guy who knows everything. So welcome to the show, Matt.
Hey, it's a pleasure to get on with you guys. And I apologize it's taking this long because I know Kirk has asked me and I've been busy covering makeup Monday night football games and doing this broadcast, doing this. Yep. So we finally got it here as the regular season's winding down and the playoffs are upon us.
Yeah.
And officially your picks won't count against our standings.
Well, listen,
if I beat you, they count.
Oh, brag. Listen, that's what Coach Young does on our 757 Saturday Sports Talk. He's a basketball coach picking football games, and he never bragged until he beats me, which happens like once a year in the playoffs when he gets me. And I'll take a couple of risks there just to make him feel good about himself. So
that's this brother right here. And then we've got the usual gangster pickers. We've got Jay Gholson, the voice of freedom football and basketball, and he's a former Potomac Panther defensive back. And then our man Jason Sterling, again, the only real adult in the room, outside of Matt, but he's like professional and he's smart and he knows a little bit about sports. But Jason Sterling, thank you for joining us again. He's a Dinwiddie general. Appreciate you, bro.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Woo! Yep. And of course, my co-host, Kirk Hilliard, the Phoebus Phantom and Virginia Tech alum. Kirk, why don't you tell folks where they can find us?
Check us out. Please subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter at the Kirk and Byrd and all the other platforms. Also want to promote. We're trying to get it going with a little more. I need to post a little more content, but it's the 703-540 Nova High School Sports Board. I'm going to start putting stuff on there every day. If you want me to recognize someone, just let me know. We've got a weekly poll up for high school, and basketball is definitely coming up. So, yep. All right, Rusty, you want to jump into the games?
Week 9? Sir. Let's go. Yeah, go through week 9, and let's try to get through that as quickly as possible, except for when you go to games I get right.
Okay. All right. Well, Phoebus Bethel went as expected, 35-0. I believe, Matt, it was 35-0 at half, wasn't it?
Was, yes, running clock, and they held Bethel to 3 yards of offense in the game. 2 days after Bethel had played a game against Heritage, which I think was a little bit of a – talked about this on our pod show, that I felt it was a little bit unfair. They had to play 3 games in 7 days because of the weather. They played Saturday against Heritage, then they had to turn around and play another Saturday game against Denby. Just unfortunate. I talked with David Porter pregame, and his guys they're getting better. It just didn't show against Phoebus, and it doesn't show often against Phoebus, whoever plays them. So I think they can still get in the playoffs and still make some noise, and they're trending in the right direction, even though they're having some inconsistent moments. Victor Romain's had a great year for them.
Okay, yeah.
So, that game went as expected. Phoebus had to play again on Saturday. They defeated Mansfield 35-0. For this week, big game, one of the biggest games in the state this year. Phoebus will be at Todd Stadium in Newport News to take on Warwick. We are previewing that game. Second game.
Kirk, I just want to ask Matt a question because he's been around some of those Phoebus games. When they're 35 is the amount in the second half, they go to a running clock. Does Phoebus put in substitutes? Are they just running the ball? And I say that because we also have Freedom's Jay Gholson here, who they take a different approach. Like they're still leaving in starters, putting up points. Can you describe that?
It's a mix, Rusty. It's not really one or the other. Now, I will tell you, in that particular game, they got in their freshman quarterback. There's a kid you need to remember for the future, Phoebus fans. I know, Kirk, you'll like this one. Maricus Banks. He's a 9th grader. He looks the part as a big-time player in the future. So he got some snaps and probably took most of them in the second half. But it's kind of a mixture because with some of your smaller schools, and Phoebus actually is technically on a regional scale, or I should say a classification scale. They just moved up to 4 this year after being in Class 3 the last few years. They don't have maybe the positions to do it at every spot. So I think it's kind of a mixture of you've got some starters in here, some backups in there, and that's kind of been their approach throughout this year.
Okay. But were they trying to score in the second half?
Not really. The clock was evaporating. I'd be honest with you, I'd go back and look at the play-by-play. They probably got about maybe 16 plays off offensively in the second half. So it wasn't much of anything. That running clock, it goes quick for them. It's not like they're shots down the field. They're really running the ball, just trying to get out of there.
Okay, cool. All right. Thank you.
So the next game was over 2 neighboring schools, Lake Braddock at West Springfield. kind of like a neighborhood rivalry. And those are two key teams in Northern Virginia in that Western Fairfax County Class 6 region. Lake Braddock looks like won a shootout 41-37. Everyone predicted that correctly. And by the way, everybody predicted Phoebus over Bethel. So Lake Braddock is impressive. Lake Braddock, Coach Mike Doherty told us at the beginning of the year, it's kind of a rebuilding year. They're having a great rebuilding year. So, and they've got some key games coming up. We're calling their game this week. Next one, kind of a surprise. I want to get some commentary on this. Is Mountain View 14, Patriot 13. Guys, we're going to be calling Patriots game this week, but give us some feedback on that, Jay Gholson.
I mean, that was a dogfight. I don't want to blame the kicker an extra point that was missed because they had some turnovers, and they did well against Eric Mensah, the guy from Mountain View. But Patriot did very well considering the circumstance. I mean, Mountain View, they were losing, they came back and they won. But it was a dogfight. Yeah.
Okay. And that's a key one in the power ratings there.
Jay, do you think they outpoint Freedom? Have you done any of the early math on these next two games if they win?
Yeah, this is what I found out through the analytics told me. If Freedom wins out, they will pass Mountain View. So it'll be Freedom number 1, Mountain View number 2, and Colonial 4. No, I'm sorry. Freedom number 1, Mountain View 2, Battlefield 3. Colonial 4.
Okay. Rusty picked Patriot, and everybody else picked it right. But that's a great game. Hats off to both teams and Coach Finnerty over at Patriot. They're going to be a tough out. A great game in Richmond. Another rivalry, kind of a neighborhood right down the road from each other. Tom Hall's Manchester and Troy Taylor's LC Byrd. 22-7, and LC Byrd played pretty darn well. I spoke to Danny Lewis, Matt, about this game, and LC Byrd, I think, is a team that could be reckoned with in that region. Everybody picked that game, and there were a couple that were very close. Rusty, I think you were closest in scoring margin, but Manchester continues to roll. Yeah. So, but Kings Fork remains undefeated. You got a little debrief on that one, Matt Hatfield?
Yeah, I was there in Suffolk. How about the junior running back for Kings Fork, who I've mentioned on my Hats Hits when I go on Twitter, is among the Fab Four of running backs in the class of 2025. You've got, and Jay, you see him all the time, Jeffrey Overton at Freedom. You've got Harry Dalton. I'm sure you're familiar with him being a Dinwiddie guy. Jason, who's a quarterback playing, he's going to be a running back in college, but playing quarterback for them. You've also got Gideon Davidson from Liberty Christian, who's committed to Clemson. Then you've got Javon Ford, who's got a lot of offers. And I'm surprised Rivals doesn't have him as a 4-star yet. 44 rushes, yes, 44 carries in the rain for 235 yards against the Oscar Smith defense and all 3 touchdowns as they escaped 21-19. And I say escape because late in the game, the freshman quarterback for Smith, Lonnie Andrews III, fired a 81-yard touchdown to the sophomore Travis Johnson, who had the game-winning touchdown catch on the final play 2 weeks ago against Indian River. Smith's offense still kind of, ironing some things out with some young kids in some spots and also on the offensive line against that Kings Fork defense. But it was a really good game, and Kings Fork won another close one. They've won 2 double overtime games this year against Indian River and Nansemond River, and they win this one by 2 points thanks to Ford's brilliance running the football, and then a Kayvon Blanding interception to seal the game at the end. So they stay unbeaten, and they're on track to get maybe their first undefeated regular season in school history, playing in that tough Region 5B where you have undefeated Maury and undefeated Warwick as well.
Wow.
Matt, I do not want to correct the great Matt Hatfield, but have you ever seen Jackson McCarter?
I have, and he's really, really good. And if you're going to add a 5th head to Mount Rushmore, he might belong up there as well. He's really, really good.
I called one of the games. Unbelievable. He had 380 yards, but he could have had over 4. They called back like a 70-yard run, easily over 400 yards. Great player.
No, he is. I think he's underrated on a state scale. I think you all that see him in Prince William know how good he is, and he's respected there. And there's some backs doing this all over the state. There was a kid from Skyline, Aiden Vaught, who ran for over 400 yards this past week, which was tied for 10th most in VHS history.
Yep.
I'm just I can't say which college coach, but I had a college coach in a Power 5 school ask me in August. He said, "I'm gonna give you the 4 backs," and those are the 4 he gave me. It was Ford, Overton, Dalton, and Davidson. He said, "Who's the best?" And my answer back to him was, and I copped out. I totally copped out, guys. I said, it depends what you want. If you want the guy that's elusive, if you want the guy that catches the ball in the backfield, if you want the guy that's the most durable. I said, this is the guy, this is the guy, this is the guy. So it kind of depends what style of offense you run and scheme. Mm-hmm. But if you got a McCarter, you're not gonna be disappointed with that either. He's pretty good too.
Yeah, yes. Okay. Just wanted to bring that up.
I wonder when the last time one of the class 5 or 6 schools had a back carry the ball 44 times in a game. I mean, you might see it down in Southwest Virginia some, Matt, but
great point.
Man,
rain
in the rain. I mean, that's you talk about a workhorse, man. I mean, that's coaches don't do that a lot anymore, man. That is
the funniest thing, Jason, about that was I said that exactly to somebody. I said, I've seen kids in the class 1, class 2 level. It's commonplace for that to see a kid at Honeacre or Grayson Overstreet back in the day. Stanton River had that, but to see someone like that in that type of game where they needed him on 4th and 1, 3rd and 1, his best run was a run up the middle on 3rd and 1 where he got stopped. And he somehow redirected right, left, and then shook and got 3 yards to get out of bounds. It was one of those hard-fought, like NFL type of runs. And once he becomes an even better finisher as a back, he'll go from very good to elite. And maybe you could take him in that conversation. You're not going to be mad if you take Overton, Dalton, Davidson, or him. But it was a really good ball game. And afterwards, he chuckled because he didn't know what his stats were. He couldn't believe he ran the ball 44 times. He felt like he could have run the ball 20 more times, which is saying something, I think.
All right, so Washington Liberty at McLean. By the way, Jay Gholson picked Oscar Smith 19-10. Everybody else had it fairly close, so it was a great game. Washington Liberty at McLean, and that was 21-7 Washington Liberty. I got that game wrong. I had McLean winning a close game with that home field advantage. That's a really good win for Washington Liberty, and they're gonna be a force to be. The Washington Liberty and Yorktown going to the playoffs. Watch out for those guys. Next game is Highland Springs Hermitage. Pretty much as we expected with Highland Springs, 36-6. Everybody called that one correctly, and Highland Springs, as they get healthier and things go on in that state matchup in Class 6, that's going to be interesting towards the playoffs. That region also. Another good game. We talked about King George at Eastern View and Culpeper. It was 28-16. Chance Wiggins, Brett Clatterball, some really big college prospects there. So that was a big win for King George. And, we're calling the Phoebus Warwick game, but what comes to mind is like Phoebus coming out of that region is going to have to play this region with King George, Dinwiddie, Varina, and Cortland, and a number of schools in Louisa County. So big win for King George. The next one, this was somewhat of an upset. South Lakes at James Madison, and South Lakes, the Seahawks, who Jay claims, I guess, has tougher kids, won 12-7. Close game. That is a big road win. Hats off to the Seahawks. Jay, you called it. You were the only one to get it right. And by the way, South Lakes is undefeated, and they're going to jump up in our poll because we had them underrated.
Okay.
Right.
Always pick the Southwestern kid over the Vienna kid.
Right.
Hey, don't lose sight of how hard it is to go into James Madison and win a football game. That is a tough place to play.
A lot of people there.
They were on a roll, winning a lot of close games. So South Lakes flipped the script on them there.
I give South Lakes credit, but I tell you, Jay, I would not want to be South Lakes if they meet Madison in the playoffs.
Oh, I know. That's
exactly what I was going to say.
These Fairfax schools will beat each other up and reverse it in the playoffs potentially.
That could very well be the region.
There's 5 or 6 schools at the same, in my opinion, sort of at the same level there that could take the other guy out. So
that could be the regional final. Lastly, we had Warwick at Hampton, or I believe that was the game was at Todd Stadium. As expected, Warwick won 36-0. We all called that one correctly, and coming off of last week. We had, let's see, Jason Sterling and Jay Gholson We're both 9-1. So Jay,
Woo!
you had Oscar Smith wrong, and then Jason, you had Madison.
Hold on, are we sure? What I don't. What did Jay pick King George or Eastern View? Because I didn't have that down.
Jay picked King George.
Okay, just check.
Yeah, he picked King George, and Rusty, you and I were 8-2. Not too shabby, by the way. I had Madison wrong. I had McLean wrong. You picked Madison, but you also picked Patriot. So,
Yep.
And that leaves the standings. Drum roll. We've got Jay Gholson and I tied at 65-18. Jason Sterling is 62-21. And I've got Rusty Byrd at 51-32.
Place, Rusty Byrd.
Yeah. Well, he's got all the family members of fraternity brothers to keep happy when he picks his game. So the other one is or the upcoming week. I didn't say that this is the ReMax Jay Gholson player of the week segment of our weekly picks. So we want to make sure and get that in there. Jay, post your phone number up in case anybody has any real estate needs up here in Northern Virginia.
703-517-8640.
All right. Sounds good. All right. So we are going to move to week 10 and some big games, some real big games. Like I said, probably the biggest game in the state is Phoebus at Warwick. Ooh. And Matt, let's get your take on this. This is a big one. You know, this has got all kinds of ramifications for possibly seedings and where people play in the playoffs. Go ahead, Matt Hatfield.
Well, you know, it's funny. This game was going to be on a Friday night. It got moved to a Saturday at 12 noon at John B. Todd Stadium in Newport News. I said to Coach Under the day, and he said, no way this happens. This game, and you guys might be taken aback by this, could literally end 0-0 through regulation. And I say that because Phoebus is giving up exactly 1 point per game.
I know.
They've got on the year in their 8 games, 6 shutouts, 2 points allowed against Oscar Smith, which was an intentional safety they took to win that 16-2. And then they gave up 1 touchdown to Hampton, their rival, 28-6. The rest of them all donuts. Warwick, its defense, I've never seen this before. In 9 games they played, they have not given up a defensive touchdown. The only touchdown they allowed was an opening kickoff to Grassfield. Since then, 8 straight shutouts of Bethel, Kickingham, Menchfield, Gloucester, Heritage, Denby, Woodside, Hampton, and they've outscored their opponents 419-0 since then. And they're giving up less than a point per game. So these are 2 unbelievable defenses. I think the first that gets double figures, if that happens, is got to feel like they're going to win the game. And it could end up a scoreless battle. You have some hallmark players on those defenses. Messiah Delhomme, the junior, do-it-all playmaker who missed a couple of games. He's back for the Raiders. He's getting recruited by a bunch of schools. For Phoebus, off the edge, you have Anthony Reddick, a Maryland commit, Tayshawn Stevenson, an Old Dominion commit. I think this game's going to really come down to which offensive line can protect its quarterback the best. I think Warwick has the better passing game, but Phoebus has this mystique about them of having been in these big games before, having been there, done that, 27 straight wins. And it's hard to go against them in this matchup against Warwick. And to me, it's even more especially hard to go against them against Warwick when you consider the following. In terms of their all-time series here against Warwick, they've just absolutely dominated it. And I know this is a different Warwick team, and people say that these things change. They haven't lost to Warwick since 2001. And I feel like they know how to operate in these type of games. And unless Eduardo Rios can hit that big play and Phoebus's offense melts down with a couple of turnovers, I kind of lean with them close in this game. I've got it scored 13-7. Might be not even that much offense, but Warwick does believe they can win this game, and they have the backs and they have the playmakers with Rajon Hammond, Julio Character, who used to play at Phoebus as one of the receivers, along with Mike Aline. Phantoms are going to try to counter by getting their guys in space, like Paul Stephen Davis, a Woodside transfer, Davion Roberts on the ground game, and Keontae Grimm on the outside, who's probably, he's not Jordan Bass, but he's the closest thing Phoebus was going to have to a Jordan Bass this year on the outside, and he's made some dazzling plays, including last week against Warwick, and he's a two-way playmaker. So this is a really tight game. I do think Warwick has the guys that can compete with them and win this, but you just feel like Phoebus knows how to function in these big games, and it's hard to go against them until somebody can prove that they are able to score on that defense and do so not just once but twice. And this is a game where if you get 2 scores, you feel very comfortable about winning, because I'd be surprised if you see this game in the 20s. Be very surprised.
Okay. You making a pick, Matt? You said P was 13-7. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think that's what I'm going to lean with, is
Yeah.
13-7. But I will tell you this, I think if Warwick was to jump on them early, I'll be curious to see how Phoebus reacts, because that's the thing I want to see. If they were to get to the state playoffs and they see one of those teams you referenced earlier, Kirk, out of 4B, like a King George with those flashy receivers and Mekhi White, Chance Wiggins, like a Verina, like a who's won a state championship here recently, like a Dinwiddie who won it last year, and Eastern View, how they respond to a deficit, because they haven't been behind and they have the longest winning streak going right now in Virginia.
Okay. Rusty, I want to get your take, because you have a fraternity brother that coaches Warwick, and you know so many people down there. What do you think, Rusty?
So I was waiting for everybody else to pick, because I assume everybody's going to pick Phoebus. And I did pick Phoebus until I just heard that analysis from Matt Hatfield, and I'm going to switch it.
Audible.
I'm now going. I originally said Warwick 21-7. I mean, Phoebus 21-17. I think my frat brother, Coach Hairston, and some of the guys they have on that team, they're ready. They're going to hear what Matt Hatfield said about not winning since 2001, and they're going to go out there and get it done. I feel very confident that Warwick. And with that defense, I talked to my man Larry Ori this weekend. I was down at the ODU game, Matt. It was incredible. I don't know if you saw it.
Great game, yeah.
Yeah, I was there, and I saw Larry Ori, who coaches the defense at Warwick. And after hearing that, and the fact, I just started thinking about Phoebus and what they've done this year. I think Warwick can pull this one out.
Okay. Did you name a score, Rusty?
Yeah, 21-17.
Okay, that's what I thought. Jason Sterling.
Man, right out of the box, you give us this game. I mean, not just the game of the week. This is probably the game of the year in the 757. Obviously, Maury Highland Springs was a great game, but you had a 804 school in there. There's such an abundance of talent on the field Saturday down at Todd Stadium. This is crazy, guys. I mean, those 14 shutouts that Matt referenced, 3 scores only between the two teams. I don't know how far in it, somebody with more time on their hands than me, you look back in the annals of history, I'm not sure you would see 2 teams with that many shutouts against each other late in the season. It'd probably have to go, I'm sure it hasn't been in the last 3 or 4 decades. You probably have to go back 30, 40, 50 years to find something like this. Defensively, both of these teams attack at the line of scrimmage. I think for Warwick, their strength is in the back end. I love their secondary. My only concern for Phoebus in this is, can they create enough in the passing game to try and test that good Warwick secondary? I'm not sure. But at the end of the day, to me, this comes down to the guys in the trenches. I think the advantage is for Phoebus in that standpoint. I've got also an epic defensive battle here. I've got the exact same score that Hatfield has. I've got them trading paint all day defensively. Phoebus 13, Warwick 7. And I think this game could be 7-7 at the end of regulation, and a defensive score in overtime could win this thing.
All right. Jay Gholson.
I'll be quick on this one. I'm going to say Warwick 12, Phoebus 6.
Phoebus, Jay Gholson has you losing to the Warwick Raiders this weekend. So I will say this about the game. Warwick can win this game. They've got the talent. They've got weapons. I think they've got a mindset. That's a program that has not been winning like Phoebus. I think they're extremely hungry. I think that the Phoebus transfer, Julio character, I think he could very well take one back. He's an incredible, dynamic returner. Warwick can definitely win this game, but they won't. Okay. Phoebus, that defense, it's one of the best defenses, probably one of the top 7 or 8 state history. They're just loaded top to bottom, both safeties, both corners. Linebackers, just a great defense, and the offense has something to prove. I'm going to take this one, Phoebus 23, Warwick 10. But Warwick can win this game. I just want to stress that. So I just think Phoebus will be too much. But like I said, that's going to be a good one with the debrief on that one. So
keep an eye on the turnover battle in this game, guys. I mean, a +1 in the turnover department could mean all the difference in a game like this.
Mistakes.
Yeah.
mistakes, cutting down on mistakes is going to be big. There's going to be a lot of tension. Phoebus has played in a lot of big games with a lot of eyes on him. I think that's going to be a big deal. So
yeah. And last thing I just want to say, as a big fan of the Peninsula District, I'm glad they're in different classes going into the playoffs. I would love for the PD to get 2 state championships.
And the last thing, and we'll move on. It's not surprising that we're spending a lot of time on this one. This could be key as to whether in the state playoffs, Phoebus has to go up and play King George, Dinwiddie, Varina, in the other school that I'm forgetting, or if they play at home at Darley Stadium there in Hampton. So this is going to be key and powerful. Moving on, another good game, Churchland at Maury, and we know all about Maury. But Matt Hatfield, Churchland's got a great record. I mean, the Truckers, very, very good program. What do you think about this game, Matt?
Well, they've had to pull 2 games coming from behind against Granby and Lake Taylor the last 2 weeks, guys. 21-20 against the Comets and 36-24 against Hank Sawyer's Titans. A couple of guys have stepped up from Kingston Hall at the receiver spot. He's sort of a mixture receiver running back. He's been starting since his freshman year. And then Dontavius Booker's right at around 1,000 yards on the ground. They've got a very big, sturdy offensive line. They've changed a couple of different guys at quarterback. I think they put Avion Jordan in as a Wildcat for a couple of formations there last week. And then they've also had Daniel Mitchell at QB, but I like what I've seen from Churchland. I think their defense has shown some improvement from the 42-0 loss against Hopewell back on September 15th, but I don't know if it's enough improvement to stop the machine that is Maury, because Maury's averaging 59.5 per game. They're outscoring Eastern District opponents 75-5, and they just got back arguably their most dynamic player, two-way playmaker, and Kendall Daniels just a couple weeks ago from injury. So, and another one that's going to be geeked up in this game, besides Daniels and all these guys that can score in the blink of an eye for Maury, is Leon Clark, a.k.a. Fat Man, the running back who used to play at Churchland. So, he's going to be trying to get 100+, 200+, couple touchdowns against his former team. This is no knock against Churchland, who's got a fine program, I think can get a 3 seed potentially still in Region 4A behind Phoebus and War Hill, who's undefeated, by the way, out of the Bay Rivers. But I got this scored, and again, this seems like a crazy score, but 50-12 for Maury. That's maybe you say 50-12, Maury's winning by 70 points per game. That brings it down to 38. So almost cut in half. But Maury last year handled them pretty good in Portsmouth. I was there for that. It was running clock by halftime. And right now it's going to take a couple of takeaways and Maury's offense not coming out, ready to play for this to be a tight game.
Okay. Good. Jason Sterling on Maury Churchland?
Yeah, so obviously, look, Maury's struggling, guys. I mean, 75 points a game over their last 5 games. That's difficult right there for other teams. I was checking something just as a point of reference here. This past winter, their basketball team, as you guys know, went 20-6. They made it to the state semifinal. They lost to I think they lost to Woodside, who went on to win the 5A Class 5 championship. Their basketball team never broke 70 points in all 26 games last year.
Oh, man.
And their football team's averaging over the last 5 games is averaging over 75 points. So
football would be basketball. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, pretty crazy. And something tells me we'll be covering Maury deep into the playoffs, so I'm not going to talk too much about them. But on Churchland real quick, their head coach, Dontrell Leonard, he took over this program, I think, in 2017. They struggled the first couple of years, but since the beginning of 2019, guys, the Truckers are 36-14. If I think the math, if I do that right, that's about a 720 winning percentage. So I like what the Truckers do on both sides of the ball. Hatfield mentioned Dontavius Booker. I think he's already a 1,000-yard rusher for these guys this year. But frankly, unless the Truckers actually drive a truck onto the field, I've got Maury big in this one, guys. I've got them 56-14.
All right. Jay Gholson.
Yeah, Jason's right. Maury, I'm going to say Maury 65, Churchland 6.
Okay. All right. Rusty, you've got your nephew Blake going there. Your niece Maya played tennis there, so you got all kinds of interest in this game.
Yeah, and my my other niece Bria is runs track there, all state last year in track. But I think that Maury has a case of the freedoms when it comes to their district. Like the Cardinal district and the Eastern district are really weak. That being said, I'm not taking anything away from Maury because they did play a couple of quality opponents in Wise, and they beat Dinwiddie pretty handily, and they beat Highland Springs. So they are definitely one of the best teams. I think they certainly beat Churchland, but I give Churchland a chance to score a few more points. I've got it 42-21. I don't think Maury really gets tested until that. I guess probably would that be the second or maybe the championship of the regional final.
Okay. All right. I'll be quick on this one. I like Maury 48-14. That might even be a little generous. And I would just say to the folks at Maury and Churchland, Maury, we're gonna talk about you a lot more coming up. You got Stonebridge and your sights probably for a state final. You got a lot to take care of, and then Churchland's going to be in the mix with the 4, and we'll be talking more and more about you guys as things crystallize in the playoffs. So another very, very good Fairfax County game. This goes back to Lorton's, basically Eastern Fairfax County, and that's South County at Lake Braddock. We keep talking Lake Braddock every week. Jason, tell us about that matchup on Burke.
Yeah, look, we've talked all season about these Fairfax schools in Class 6, both regions C and D, and sort of how they punch and counterpunch one another from week to week. To me, that tells me that in both of those regions, there's a lot of depth across the teams. Maybe not a dominant team like you would see in Class 6 with a Freedom or a Highland Springs, but a ton of depth nonetheless. Jerry Pannoni, he's got South County trending in the right direction again now that he's back at the helm there. Jordan Dennis, Rusty's guy, great quarterback. I love him. Julius Person, I think, leading the way at the linebacker spot on defense for these guys. I think the Stallions really expect to make a state title run here. And frankly, they're only 4 years removed from that run that they had in 2019 when they won it. Now, on the other side, Mike Doherty, you guys had him on. I know he's a friend of your show. He's got Lake Braddock off to a 7-1 start this year, and he's also eyeing a deep playoff run. What I was struck, I went back and listened to when you guys interviewed him, and he said that he had 190 kids come out in all 4 grades for his program, 9 through 12. Guys, numbers are down in high school football, as we all know, in many places, not just across Virginia, but across the nation. Doherty has found a formula to get kids to come out. So that's a talented team. They're well coached. But in the last 10 head-to-head games that South County and Lake Braddock have played, South County has an 8-2 advantage in those games. I've got a really, really tight game here, and I think it could go either way, but I think it's going to be 9-2 in favor of South County. I've got South County 28, Lake Braddock 21.
Whoa!
Good. Matt Hatfield.
Jason was spot on with the analysis there. I've got it 35-28 in favor of the Stallions. You look at the offenses, they're very similar. 40+ 5 times this year for Coach Doc's bunch at Lake Braddock. They had that 41-37 head spinner with West Springfield. Christian Porter at quarterback's done a nice job. Jeremiah Brown running it. And their defense is getting takeaways. 16 this year, 11 on interceptions, 4 by Ryan Matheny. Shout him out. They've got to get takeaways of Jordan Dennis this year, who's completing 65% of his passes. You have 2 really good junior wideouts to watch out for in this one. Number 3 for Lake Braddock, Kai Austin. He's got 42 catches already. Tyler Orth, number 10 for South County. He's got 37 grabs, and 6 different guys have caught a touchdown for South County. 7 different dudes have caught a touchdown for Lake Braddock. But I think Jordan Dennis's ability to run and throw will help. And then those linebackers that Jason touched on with Person, who's going to Navy, Joe Poinelli, and Tyler Olmeyer will make a couple of stops, 3-year starters at linebacker, just enough to eke it out. And what will be, I think, a back-and-forth game until midway fourth quarter when it's probably 28-28 and South County gets the ball back, and they might score that go-ahead touchdown.
Okay. So you got South County. What was that score, Matt?
35-28.
I'm going to plug you real quick, and this is genuine. Listen, for those folks in Fairfax County, these stats that Matt is getting, okay, this is not the NFL. He's has connection. He's getting these stats from the teams, the stats, and all this stuff. Matt does this for a living. He's talking to people on the phone. You can't get this content anywhere else. Spend the money on VA Preps. He has a weekly poll in all 6 classes. I follow it religiously. I mean, I really like his content. I can personally, vouch for it. So, having said that, Jay, what do you think?
Let me comment on Jason Sterling's comment about Lake Braddock and the numbers. They have 4,000 kids there at Lake Braddock. What do you expect?
You still got to get kids to come out, though, Jeff.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of schools.
Numbers are down, Jay. Concussions.
But 4,000 kids, I can find 100 kids out of 4,000.
Yeah, no. But
Now this
Yeah,
is
look,
right.
it helps. It helps for sure. But, he's in the halls, working the halls, man. Trust me.
Yeah, he's in the hallways. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, this is a rivalry game. They're very close together, Lake Braddock and South County. I think maybe like 3 or 4 miles apart. But South County, I'm not sold. I'm selling. So I'm gonna go with Lake Braddock on this one. It's at Lake Braddock. They're number 1 seed. So I'm gonna say Lake Braddock 21, South County 10. Sorry, Jordan Dennis. It ain't gonna happen.
Rusty, you got too many ties into both these teams. I can't mention. What's your take on this?
As Jordan Dennis's quarterback coach for a number of years, and he led us to this championship in Fairfax County youth football. I have a lot of confidence in my man. I'll tell you this: the things that stick out to me is both teams. Their common opponent with a loss is they both lost to Madison. Lake Braddock got blown out. It was earlier in the year, 31-7, where South County played a much closer 21-14. I think, Kirk, you were at that game, right?
Yep.
And I watched it online. South County is really good. And Jay, you got to think about this. I'm going to pick South County to win a close game. I think they'll win 28-24, but you got to remember, and I'm a big Lake Braddock fan. My wife went there.
Yeah.
Lake Braddock let Colgan score on them. Remember that. We talked about that.
That's game 1. That's game 1.
Game 1 doesn't matter. Does not matter. Anytime you can throw the Colgan factor in there, you got to go the other way. There we go.
All right. So these are 2 teams that are in the same region and, may likely
1 and 2
face each other again. I would say this. I've seen a lot of teams up here in Northern Virginia, and I watch a lot of tape and huddle. South County and Stonebridge have the most dudes, guys that look the part. Ton of great players, physical. If South County can get things going, what a wild card they would be, with those athletes and that quarterback. I'm going to go with the Stallions here. South County. I like you going to Lake Braddock. Burke Lake Road, 27-17. There's something about a Lorton kid that's tougher than Burke, It's just something about it, Jay.
Yeah. Those Lorton kids are right beside Prince William County. That's what makes it so tough.
Next game is another big game in Class 5 that's going to have playoff implications. Stonebridge no longer plays Ashburn, which was considered the Battle of the Burn. At least they didn't have them on the schedule this year. And this game is going to be at Stonebridge. This is the big game in the entire region, that Class 5 region. And we've got a mainstay in the Stonebridge program. Jason Sterling, talk to us about this game. Everybody can't wait. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, there's a lot on the line for both teams in this game. The Potomac District title's on the line, possible bye weeks for both teams in the first round of the playoffs. Remember, Region D only takes 6 teams, with the top 2 teams getting byes. But more importantly, I think a good sense of who might be the favorite coming out of the region, depending on what happens on Friday night. So now, look, I'm sure Riverbend, Massaponax want to have something to say about that. But you could see these 2 teams lining up again right after Thanksgiving. Likely over in Brambleton. I don't think Stonebridge could outpoint them, even with victories against them and victory in their last game against Riverside. Here's where I'm at with this, guys. Briar's looking to get back to the mountaintop where they were back in, I think it was 2010-13. Everybody remembers that run they had with McSorley, Brandon Polk. I've talked to a lot of people that went to some or all of those championship games that weren't from the Northern Virginia area and weren't too familiar with Briar. They said to a person that was some of the best football that they had ever seen, not just that year, but ever. So that's how good those Briar teams were to think back on. And they've been trying to build that back up. They haven't quite found the formula yet to get back there. But this game could go a long way in starting to get that road rebuilt for him. And Coach Burnett and his players, and he's got talent. Carmichael, Capistrand, Dudley, guys we've talked about on some of the other shows. Tyler Yoder, they could give Stonebridge a problem. They can make life very difficult for them. But this time of year, you have to be able to play 48 minutes against Mickey Thompson's single wing offense that's staring you right in the face. You might know how to stop it. The question is, can you? Stonebridge's defense was tested early in the year, that crazy schedule coming out the box that they had to play. They seem to be more healthy now. They're playing more aggressive as a team. I'm not big on statement games, guys, but if there's ever one that feels like it, this may be the one for both teams. Give me Stonebridge 42, Briarwoods 13.
Oh,
man.
early.
Do y'all hear that on Belmont Ridge Road in Brantwood?
Woo!
Okay. Matt Hatfield, we know you know these programs very well. I cannot wait to hear what you're going to say.
Well, it's interesting, but my friends and folks down here in Tidewater have been asking me the last few weeks, specifically those around the Maury and Green Run programs, who are we going to see in the state championship? Thinking that Stonebridge is off the radar screen because they've fallen out of our top 10 in Class 5. They've had those losses against really, really strong teams we know, out-of-state foes. And they played that tough game that went down the wire with Madison when they lost on a crazy special teams play. But look, I think Mickey Thompson's team, Jason hit the nail on the head. They're getting healthy now. Gabriel Colthurst has a 65-yard touchdown catch against Independence. Jonathan Newton makes 14 tackles on defense in that game. Got a good kicking weapon, too, in Connor McLaughlin. And they've got a bunch of guys from Xavier Wimbush and Sean Robertson at defensive back to the Wake Forest commit at Miles Turpin. And remember, Troy Marquez at running back had 122 yards and 2 TDs against Madison in a game that they almost won, who's a really good Class 6 team that can get to the state championship game still. But I think the line of scrimmage is going to be, much like we talked about with Phoebus and Warwick, is going to be a big deal in this game. And I'm curious to see, Mike Burnett has beaten Stonebridge before when he coached at Tuscarora, and he's a championship level coach like Mickey Thompson. I do wonder if they're closing the gap or if they're a year away, because two of their better guys on offense, Brady Carmichael, as Justin talked about on offense, the QB spot, and Colin Capistrand, his lead receiver. Maybe this is a game where this burns that hunger for a rematch in the playoffs in November, where they could run into each other in the championship game. If they're able to knock them off, this is an accelerating moment for them, or they're perhaps a year away. I think Stonebridge's offense is going to come to play here and run the football and play some big boy smash mouth football. I've got them winning this game 38-21. But I would say beware, Briarwoods is going to make a title push with this group led by Carmichael and Capistrand. If not this year, certainly going to be in the mix come next year.
Okay. Jay Gholson, great place to sell houses out here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Now, here's the deal. If you're Briarwoods, do you want to show your cards now? Because they have right now a 30.25 rating. Stonebridge has a 26.2 rating. So if they, Briarwoods loses this game, it's not a big deal for them. They'll be the number 1 seed no matter what. You'll play Stonebridge again in the playoffs. So, and of course, you have Massaponax, who has a 26 rating. So it's very close to 2, 3, and 4 are very close. So Stonebridge needs this game to be the number 2 seed. So I'm going to say Stonebridge 22, Briarwoods 15. And Briarwoods won't show their cards this game.
That's an interesting observation. And I think sometimes when we see games late in the season and a potential rematch, that chess game with coaches as to what they pull out of the playbook is always very intriguing for me on both sides.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what either coach is going to, if they're going to show stuff that maybe they think they want to keep and, maybe not put it out there and just run more basic stuff.
Yeah.
Probably playing for the regional final home field advantage here. Rusty, what's your take?
I think we had both coaches on the show, and we appreciate it because they gave us their time and they gave us a lot of insight on the year. I think Stonebridge is on a mission after the early losses. I think they will win this game 35-24, but yeah, I think you make a good point regarding what Briarwood shows. Stonebridge needs to win, but I'll tell you this just a little nugget. I was in Norfolk this weekend. I was talking to my brother, my nephew, and we talked to Eric Gibson, EJ. He was the quarterback at Maury. He and my niece, Maya, are very, very good friends. I was talking to Eric about this, and a lot of people from the Maury area. And the one thing that, now, Matt, I know people aren't thinking about Stonebridge, but they are, because all the Maury people I talk to, yeah, you're right, they have the loss, but they're like, if Stonebridge can make it to the championship game, they are worried. That's the one team they're worried about. And I'll tell you, it's because Mickey can coach. He can flat out coach.
Jay, I mean, Rusty, you made a great point. And Jay brought up the point, I think, which is excellent as well, about the showing your cards, because you could see this team again. To that, I was with Lauren Johnson and Kevin Tucker at their scrimmage, Highland Springs and Thomas Dale, before the year. And we were talking about, the Class 5 picture. And Lauren Johnson spoke up right away. He says, listen, I know Maury's got a lot of guys. I know Green Run's got a lot of playmakers. He says, but don't sell Mickey Thompson and Stonebridge short. They're going to be there when it's all said and done. And I feel like Maury's got that in the back of their mind. And if ever Green Run was to get over that hurdle, you would always wonder about it. It was the old thing I think we saw with Oscar Smith years ago, that hangover effect. If you knock off a Maury, by the way, if Stonebridge is there the next week, you can't rest on that, because Stonebridge has been there before. They played these big games. I think it happened to Bayside back in 2010 in its regional championship game when they beat Oscar Smith. They had a Hermitage the next week, and Brendan Riddick and those guys came and beat them with Curtis Grant, stud linebacker. So that's always the interesting thing. I think people forgot about them, but like Jason said, if they can go out here and have a statement win, I think the entire state will say, Stonebridge is back, when they really never left.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a great point. Whoever gets them through, guys, look, and I know we're sort of putting Maury in that spot. I mean, they're going to have to get to some tough games, your Kings Fork and your Green Runs and these guys. But for the first time in a few years, we get them sort of out of their backyard and take them to Charlottesville. So somebody gets them up in Charlottesville this year. Yep. So they lose a little bit of that, quote, not technically home field, but that home field advantage. So,
but Jason, I'm looking at it the other way. I think there was too much pressure on Maury being at home. I was in those stands, and the Maury fans were losing their mind because they were complaining about Maury's coach. His butt was getting tight and things they were doing. I think them being away will actually benefit them.
Oh, okay. All right. So, Briarwoods can win this game. Stonebridge Stonebridge started off rough, and they are a team that's starting to play well together. But this is one of those teams that they don't click that with. They still have a lot of holding penalties. Some of them undeserved, but they need to cut down on those things. I think that Briarwoods, with the weapons that they have, Tyler Yoder is a name that you didn't mention. He's a very good slot type of player, and I love Trey Dudley, man. I love watching him play. Big back, 6'1", very good speed, and I think he was at Chapel Hill this past weekend. So Matt Hatfield, watch him go up on the recruiting boards. But Stonebridge, they'll make a statement over here at their home field. It's a great home field advantage. Jay, I would say this: these power points will determine who has the home field advantage for the regional finals, and I know Stonebridge wants that. So I think that this game is very relevant. And I would say that Coach Thompson, he's not going to coach that much longer. This is an interesting team. It's an intriguing team. If you look at the weapons that they have on offense, Gabriel Colhurst, Naeem Diggs, Jordan Kaiser, throw in Miles Turpin, who I think is the best player in Loudoun County, dynamic. He's going to touch the ball more and more. If this team gets going, and Coach Thompson, he can coach. Maury, I like Stonebridge 37-24 over Briarwoods. Next game, we got a Beach District Kempsville Chief in the house, and Matt Hatfield. Matt, big Beach District game. Green Run is at Tallwood. Tell us about that one.
Actually, the game I'm circling to be at potentially on Friday night. You got Green Run putting up almost 49 points a game, giving up just 7.5. Gasson Farrar, the quarterback, has been slinging it just like Kevin White did previously, who's down at North Carolina A&T, and Xavier Davis before him. And the receivers for them, my gracious, we know about Keelan Brody Adams, who's got, I think it's 55 touchdown catches and counting the future Hokie. But Jaden Anderson as a junior, he's soaring up recruiting boards as a big-time playmaker. Quali Price got a couple of offers right out of the gate, had 2 touchdown catches to begin the year against Kempsville. And this is a game where Green Run's defense could get tested because Tallwood's got the second highest scoring offense in the 11 School Beach District at 33.4 points per game. Their defense has been leaky at times, giving up almost 25 a game, so that's not a great recipe to stop Green Run. So they have to win maybe a shootout type of game unless they can control the clock with their running game. I think Jacob Rojas at quarterback can make some things happen, running and throwing for Tallwood. Reginald Costello's a 4-year starter who will certainly have some good plays, running the ball, hitting people. But Green Run is, I think, after a couple of uneven showings, especially the game against Bayside a couple weeks ago, where they were tied at 14 at the half and had like 150 yards of penalties like in the first 3 quarters. I think they want to have one of those big performances. And their coach, Brandon Williams, is pretty critical. And in a conversation with one of the articles, he said something in sort of reference to that Morgan, like, we're not playing at the level we need to be playing at. So I could see them having a big number in the first half. I've got it scored Stallions of Green Run 46, Lions of Tallwood 15. But I want to say I like the job that John Keppel's done at Tallwood, and they can still get a top 3 or 4 seed in that Region 5A playoff picture.
That's some good analysis. Matt Hatfield possibly be there. Jason Sterling on the beach matchup.
Yeah, look, another season, another 8-0 start for Green Run, right? They're coming off back-to-back undefeated regular seasons, guys. And Coach Williams has the cupboard stocked again here. Matt mentioned a lot of their guys there, won't repeat those. I think the guy I like the most here, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, is they call him Big Teasy, Thomas Wilder, one of their offensive linemen. I think that kid measured in August at like 6'7" and a half and 293. He's a sophomore, I believe.
Ooh. Yeah.
Which is nuts. So I don't know why a college would want a frame like that, right? So that's just that's crazy. I mean, on a sunny day, his shadow could literally cover the entire defense. So
he looks like, you remember Vincent Painter, Jason? Remember Vincent Painter, who played at Virginia Tech? He looks just like him.
Yeah, this kid's huge. I mean, if he grows another inch and a half and plays at 320, maybe as a weight, gosh, man, he's going to be a force. Tallwood's had a couple really nice victories, though, guys. They've beaten Kempsville, Lansdowne. Green Run's a different animal, though. Give me Green Run in this one by a score of 48-10.
Jay Gholson.
Actually, Jason stole my thunder.
Big Teasy?
I'm going to say Green Run 44, Tallwood 6.
Okay.
And Jay, you stole my thunder in that Green Run scoring 44 points as well. I've got Green Run, but the defense giving up a few. So I have a Green Run 44-24 over Tallwood. I think Green Run has been the kryptonite for a lot of teams in that district and region, and so I think they keep rolling.
Okay. All right. So I wanted to say something about Green Run High School right off of Independence. We've had Brandon Williams on, Coach Williams, twice, Rusty. Great guy, Richmond guy that went to Norfolk State. But if you've noticed, if you look at the way we talk, we rarely mention Green Run in that Title V, the Class 5. We're talking about Mooring. We're talking about Stonebridge. So, Green Run Stallions, hey, there's a state title out there for you. Unbelievable weapons. I think the people in Blacksburg are going to love Keelan Adams. Coach Williams talks about him golden. I think Green Run is going to fine-tune things. If anybody's watched their highlights and their film, man, they are electric. I like Green Run in this one, 56-6.
Wow.
All right. I like the Stallions in that one. So another game is Hopewell at Thomas Dale. All right. And that is Matt, you can give us isn't that a 3 going against a 6?
Yep.
That is correct.
Ooh.
Hopewell is a 3A. And, just a couple weeks ago, we had moved them up into our top 5 in the Class 3 rankings. They've taken a tumble. Lake Hitter's taken a tumble. And Lafayette now might be able to hold off Hopewell for that number 1 seed. And granted, Hopewell had a nice 39-8 win over Meadowbrook here, but they've had an injury to Keshawn Henderson. He's not 100% healthy, the running back and younger brother of Trevion Henderson, who's at Ohio State, who's also been hurt, by the way. Makari Tatum's had a nice year. It's really impressive. You talk about highlights, Kirk, with the speed of green run, and he was showing some read option stuff early in the year against Lake Taylor, and people were looking at him like, oh my goodness, where did this quarterback come from? Hopewell has got their work cut out for him, even with one of the best linebackers in all of Virginia and Patrick Scott, who had 78 tackles in the first 7 games, and to me is like a Central District Player of the Year, Class 3 All-State lock, and one of the top 4 or 5 defensive players in the state in Class 3, because Thomas Dale, despite the injury to Ethan Mincher, their quarterback, who's out for the year, they continued to put up good numbers. They had a scare this past week to Thomas Dale, rallied in that game against Patrick Henry 28-17, got a big field goal, and then Nick Tyree scored twice in the fourth quarter. He's going to Delaware, and I think he's the electric playmaker that makes a difference for Thomas Dale in this game, where I could see it being a little tight early in this game, and they pull away late to get a 27-20 win.
Okay, got that one close. Jason Sterling.
Just real quick on that 6 versus 3, I think a lot of people, because I've talked to a lot of people about this, you think that, when you play down a couple levels, you lose those points in that initial piece. So, for example, if Dale wins this game, they would get their 20 points, but they'll get the 6 points back because you get in one of the areas of the rider or the bonus points that you get in VHSL. When you play every class you play down, you get 2 additional points back. So that's how they would make that back. So there's no punishment for playing down. So a lot of people say, hey, why would you play, why would Dale go schedule Hopewell this late in the year? It really doesn't have any downside to it, frankly. So I was surprised a little bit. Dale needed a rally last week in that game to knock off Patrick Henry. I think that game was tied at halftime, or maybe they might have even been down, but they moved to 8-0 nonetheless. Nick Tyree is a great running back, continues to lead the way for those guys. I think Friday night he had 170, maybe 180 yards, 3 times in the end zone. Hopewell bounced back from lost the week before. They've got a great ground game as well. Patrick Scott, they had a couple backs go for over 100. And Patrick Scott's a great defensive player too. I think he might have led the team in tackles and sacks last week as well. Hopewell's a tough out in Class 3, guys. A very, very difficult out for anybody in Class 3. But I've got Dale in this game by the score of 34-20.
Okay. Jay Gholson.
Well, when I was in high school, Hopewell was a AAA team in Petersburg. It's basically how they dropped from this to this on enrollment. But this game here, I have Thomas Dale 22, Hopewell 6.
Okay, 22-6. Mr. Byrd.
Yeah, you brought up the fact that Hopewell is a Class 3 and Thomas Dale is a Class 6. But I'll tell you, right here in Prince William County, they don't intermix in terms of being in the same district. But I can guarantee you, if Brentsville District was Class 6 or just was Class 3 and played a schedule with these other Prince William County schools, I don't think there's 4-5 teams better than them. The only ones that I think, are better that could beat them would be, of course, Freedom, Battlefield, Patriot. But I don't think Gainesville could beat them. They scrimmaged earlier this year without Colvin Smith, and they handled Gainesville. So I say that because Brentsville is Class 3, but that Class 3 has a lot of quality teams. We always talk about 4. We talk about definitely 5 and 6, but Class 3, Phoebus moved up. And we've been talking about Brentsville, and we've talked about Kettle Run. But somebody reached out to me today to say, watch out for Thomas Jefferson in the Richmond area. They're undefeated. And, for me, I'm like, I always thought of TJ as a basketball school, Kendrick Warren and old school. But Thomas Jefferson, and man, we'll do this later. We start talking about some of the regional and PowerPoints and stuff. But I'd say a lot of these Class 3 teams are very good.
I agree. And they could be Patriot, Brentsville.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tough region. You got Kettle Run, Brentsville, and Thomas Jefferson all unbeaten 3B. And by the way, last game of the regular season, Brentsville, Kettle Run. Have fun with that, as you'll have just a major matchup with that one.
I'm really high on TJ, man. I liked what they're doing this year.
Yeah, me too. So anyway, Hopewell will lose this one because Thomas Dale, I think they're rolling and they'll win a close one though, 28-21.
Okay. Yeah, it's a key game for both teams. Hopewell, if you look at those power rankings, the seedings in Class 3, this is a big one. But I think there's too much Thomas Dale. I'm going to take Thomas Dale 34-21. and Hopewell 7. But Hopewell, you guys are right. There's two different regions there in Class 3 that are going to be in play. And, one of the teams that's going to also be in play is War Hill. That's our next game. We get the Tab Tigers at War Hill in Williamsburg. Matt, I know you're familiar with these two programs. We've looked into them. We've called a couple of both of their games. Tell us about this game, Matt.
One of the best individual performances I've seen this year came back in early October. 68-20, Tab beat Bruton. 249 yards rushing, 5 touchdowns. Also had a pick. He was all over the place. Kid named Cam Dixon for Tab. And they got off to a really good start under first-year head coach John Byron. He was an assistant with Lafayette on their state championship team during the COVID season a few years ago, was a head coach several years back in the Peninsula District at Menchville when they had Clifton Richardson, who went on to UVA. But they're hitting a little bit of I wouldn't say a skid as much as a little bit of a rocky patch in the schedule because they're playing some tough teams. They got shut out a couple weeks ago by Lafayette, just lost a heartbreaker 16-13 to a rival in Grafton. So they're trying to avoid a 3-game losing streak, and they're going to have a hard time against Liam Francisque, who's one of the best dual threat guys in the 7-5-7 at the quarterback spot. It was a running back previously, now playing QB. Warhill's putting up 43 points a game. They got Jaden McAdoo at running back, Teelan Edie. So they got 3 really primetime players, and I think Warhill will get out to an early lead in this game and probably coast something like 42-14.
Jason Sterling.
So if Warhill can find a way to get by Tab this week, and I think they played Jamestown in their last week, they'll have their first undefeated season in school history. Now it's a fairly new school for the beach area, right? I think he opened in 07, maybe
07. Yep.
07. But that's a pretty good accomplishment, guys, to be able to to put that flag in the ground. Before you run off and look at their schedule, I'll tell you it includes wins over Matoka and Lafayette, both very solid playoff teams in Class 5 and Class 3 respectively. So they're not too far behind Phoebus in the PowerPoints right now. They're only a half point behind them. So depending on what happens with Phoebus in that first game we looked at, I'm sure after their game's over, they'll have their eye on that Saturday game, that Phoebus Warwick matchup. Frankly, I think we put the curse on Tab last week with the Terry Kirby, Chris Slade curse. So I'll lay off this time on that. Tab's a good football team, guys, but I think it's going to take a really, really good football team to knock off War Hill. Give me the Lions from War Hill in this one, 38-7.
Okay. Jay Gholson.
I changed my mind. I had Tab earlier today. So I'm going to go War Hill. I'm going to say War Hill 24, Tab 6.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm keep that War Hill train rolling. I've got them winning 42-10.
Okay. I like War Hill in this one. The fact of what they did at Lafayette. I think that this is a team that Phoebus could see in their sights, and not a lot of people were talking about them in Class 4. We were talking a lot about Dinwiddie and Verina and King George and Phoebus. I like War Hill 33, Tab 6. Jason, we're going to get you to give us a preview of Fairfax at West Springfield. Real quick, shout out to Virginia beating their first top 10 team in maybe ever. Tony Elliott, you mentioned Clifton Richardson, Menchville going to UVA. That's a big win for them, a very big win for the UVA Cavaliers. So hats off to them. Jason, really a good game. Fairfax at West Springfield. 2 teams, again, that are in that, the Northern Virginia regions up here where they beat up on each other. Talk about that game because Springfield lost a close one. This is going to be a great matchup in Fairfax County.
I'll plug your Cavaliers real quick here, even though you're a tech guy, Kirk. That they're only the second team in the history of college football. I think Oklahoma in 61 for a team that is 1-5 or worse to beat a top 10 team on the road. It's only happened 2 times: 1961 with Oklahoma, and this past Saturday with UVA. So,
wow,
right. West Springfield.
They've got some punch. I watched them against NC State. They should have won that game, and Virginia's they've got some punch, and that's a big win for them, especially with that tragedy last year. And the Virginia game at the end of this year may not have bowl implications, but there's some excitement around both programs with Virginia Tech beating Wake Forest. So
yeah.
Yeah. So go ahead with
West Springfield, Fairfax.
Yes,
There's a
sir.
2-game stretch in the middle of September when Fairfax dropped back-to-back games against South County and Lake Braddock. 2 losses to 2 really good teams. I think the overall youth of Fairfax at the time sort of got to him. Coach Trey Taylor, I think, only had like 2 returning starters from that 13-1 great team that they had last year. Of course, everybody, when you think of Fairfax, you go right to the Georgia Bulldog commit, Christopher Jones. Great player. They also get back Drew Taylor. I think he'd been injured a good chunk of the season. He's another all-state linebacker, so that should help him down the stretch. Look, on the other hand, West Springfield guys, they're coming off a tough, close loss to Lake Braddock. That was a shootout. You mentioned it at the beginning of the show, Kirk, when you went over that score, 41-37. In their last 4 games, though, they've given up an average of almost 27 points a game. So I'm going to lock that number in for Fairfax at 27 points. But I'm going to say West Springfield ekes it out by 1 point. I've got West Springfield 28-27. A back and forth game, should be a good one, but I think West Springfield pulls it out 28-27.
Okay. Matt Hatfield.
I'm right there with Jason on this because I want to pick Fairfax. They're getting a little bit healthier. They've had some injuries that have hurt them early in the year. We saw that really affect them in that South County loss. That was a lopsided beatdown. But I think they're a better football team than maybe they've shown in recent weeks. However, West Springfield's offense is dynamic, and I think if Fairfax gets behind in this game and they have to abandon the run and go one-dimensional, that could be a little dicey for them. I like Devontae Rudolph a ton for them. He's averaging 32.5 yards per catch, and he's one of the best-kept secrets in terms of receivers in the state. Yeah, he's got 22 grabs for 716 and 6 TDs. He's having a heck of a year. They lost a shootout. Generally, when you see a team lose a shootout, one of 2 things could happen. That team's flat the next week, did that game with Lake Braddock last week, or they win one of those type of games. So I've got to score a shootout over Taylor Jones and the Lions here, 32-26 for West Springfield. They have a couple of those, I call that Occoquan Region 6C guys, the seatbelt region. It'll be the seatbelt region game of the week.
All right.
Like it.
Jay Gholson.
Now remember, Chris Jones is out
Yeah,
for the
he
year.
tore a ligament in his toe.
Wow.
He's done.
Yeah,
Yep.
he's done. I'm going West Springfield. I'm going to say 36-30. West Springfield. They're tough at home.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I've talked about Fairfax being new kids on the block. But I've said, okay, coach, prove it to me. But I think they will actually upset West Springfield because the game is at West Springfield, if I'm not mistaken. I think Fairfax is going to come in there and win a close one, 28-21.
Okay. I'm impressed with West Springfield. It's a team we haven't talked about enough, and as the playoffs come, we're going to be talking about them more. I like West Springfield 32-10, and another great game up here in Northern Virginia. Gets more towards the end of that Arlington. Arlington flows into McLean. Langley at Washington and Liberty. Washington and Liberty is a team too that is putting together a great year. They're going to be a force to be reckoned with. The 6th. Jason, tell us about this game.
Yeah, Langley's coming off their bye week. We had them, I think, a couple of weeks ago against Yorktown. They took a 3-point loss in that game against Yorktown. But their 3 losses this year, they're 5-3 right now. They're by a combined 12 points. So they've been Langley's been in every game with a chance to win each of the games. But very quietly, guys, Washington Liberty is putting together a very, very good 2023 campaign here.
Mm-hmm.
They've got a 7-1 record coming into this game. We haven't talked about them, so just a little bit about their head coach, Josh Shapiro. He's been running the show at Washington Liberty now since 2007.
Wow.
And this is the best start under his tenure that they've had. So they can get past Langley. They probably finish 9-1 on the year as they wrap up with Wakefield in the last week of the season.
Mm-hmm.
So I was looking at some numbers here on Shapiro. His only playoff win is against Yorktown in 2010. And that was 9 years before they changed the school name. So it goes back a while since Shapiro's actually won a playoff game. So I think they're looking to not only get into the playoffs, but advance a little bit into the playoffs, advance farther than what maybe they have in some of the other years where they've been eliminated very early. Let's start by getting them to 8-1 this Friday against Langley. Give me Washington Liberty in this one, 31-21 over Langley.
Well, like Jason said, Washington Liberty is 7.
Jay, make sure you're good because you want to sell some houses here.
Oh yeah, especially at Langley. But unfortunately, I have Washington Liberty 30, Langley 20.
Okay.
Well, I'm going with the old cousin factor. I had two cousins that played at Washington and Liberty, and it hasn't failed me yet. They went on to play college football under this coach. And so I like Washington and Liberty to win 33-20 at home.
Anybody know who the head coach before Shapiro was at Washington and Liberty?
No.
Wait a minute, hold on. Sandra Bullock's dad? Mr. Bullock?
RJ Windows, who's currently the coach at Independence. He's back. He had missed a few games early in the year here. He's back at Independence. He was Mickey Thompson's defensive coordinator for a number of years at Stonebridge.
Good info.
Yeah. Okay. I like the Generals team that's going into the playoffs. A lot of momentum, 24-0 over Langley. We're going to round out this week before drum roll. We get to the ReMax Jay Gholson Player of the Week. We are going to talk about a game, a key matchup in Prince William County, and Rusty and Jay both know these programs well. That's Patriot at Garfield. I know both of you know these teams in depth, and it was kind of a little bit of a surprise pick we got in here. Jay, talk to us about this game.
Let me say this. Garfield is a team that is young and confident. And basically Patriots young too. Now right now they're both like an 8th or 9th seed in Region 6B. So it's basically a playoff game. It's at Garfield. And I'm going to go with Garfield this one. I'm going to say Garfield. I think Patriots have a letdown because of last week's game. So I'm going to say Garfield's going to win this game 20-12. Garfield over Patriot.
All right. That's the man that said not so fast last week and was one of the few people that picked South Lakes to beat Madison. Matt Hatfield, what's your take on this game?
To follow up Jay there, Garfield's quietly their last 4 games, I think they've given up 14 points or less, so their defense is starting to round to form a little bit. That said, to go back to the guy Rusty brought up, Jackson McCarter, he's going to be hard to bottle up in this game. I do think Patriot, understanding the magnitude of this game, they don't want to be a low seed or find themselves on the outside looking in here. If worse came to worse, and they finished up with a real thud here, but I think Patriots' experience will be the difference in this game. And on the line of scrimmage, I think they'll have their way late to wear them down. So the final might be a little bit misleading and deceiving. I think, in fact, the score might mirror my 20-13 pick of W&L over Langley, but it'll be 2 touchdowns in the second half, probably fourth quarter, to allow Patriot to salt it away and turn a 20-13 lead into a 36-13 pull-away win.
All right. I've covered both of these teams. I was the analyst for a Patriot game against Gainesville, and that's the game Jackson McCarter went over 380. And the next I did a Garfield Forest Park game, and after the game I interviewed Coach Tony Keeling, Garfield's head coach. I think Garfield's a good team, but I just don't think they have enough firepower on the offensive side of the ball. Garfield's only averaging 17 points a game, and Patriot can score that in the first half. And so I think that's going to make the big difference. And I like Patriot to win 38-17.
Okay. I think Patriots a little tired of hearing all about Battlefield and Freedom Woodbridge. I think they make a statement. Coach Fennerty, Pioneers 41-17 over Garfield. Want to encourage everybody to please subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, and also the Facebook forum for talking about athletes in Northern Virginia, the 703-540 Nova High School Sports board on Facebook. And at this point, we are going to introduce the ReMax top performer, Jay Gholson, and his player of the week. Before we do that, Jay, what's your phone number again so people can contact you? We got people. Jay, one of the things I was going to say is Rusty and I have seen this. A lot of people finish their active duty career in Hampton Roads down near Matt, and they'll get a job with a contractor up here. So you folks down in Chesapeake and Virginia Beach, you may want to keep Jay's number. Jay, what's your number?
703-517-8640.
All right, Jay, tell us about your player of the week.
Don't get mad, Rusty. But high school's Jeff Overton, who scored 5 touchdowns against Potomac.
No, that's I know you're gonna always pick a Freedom player every other week. It's just who's it gonna be this time?
Yeah, but Jeff Overton.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's and Jeffrey Overton's shaping up to be a big recruiting battle. You know, a lot of people are going after him. Good size back, and you know, the in-state schools want to get one of these key players. Go ahead, Rusty.
Let me ask you this. I want to ask Matt this real quick. I've talked to some other people about Overton. Do you think he's actually going to be recruited as a running back or a defensive back? Because all these fancy yards and touchdowns, a lot of people do that. But for him at the next level, do you think he would be better off playing defensive back?
There are actually some college coaches that I've been in touch with that think he can be a slot receiver type. So he could also be that, yeah, because of how Freedom has used him offensively, and you know, watching him in the state championship and getting the privilege to call that game last year against Madison, he does things that evoke Reggie Bush. It's just I hate continuing to use that comparison over and over and over again, but he does some things with the ball and space in his hands that, and a couple of his cuts that make you say that looks like that guy that played with Matt Leinart in Southern Cal years ago. And defensive back, I'd be curious to see. You know, they've done a really good job with defensive backs, as Jay knows. Watch some of these guys that they've had the last couple of years. That they get developed and they get tutored up, and you know, if he wants to. But I think when you have a kid that electric with the ball in his hands, my goodness, it's something else. Now, you know, it does surprise me when a player of that ilk. We watched it on a lower level, I could say, or more closer to home level here. Old Dominion's got a guy, Lamorion James, who I was convinced would be an offensive player. He played some running back and wide receiver at Indian River, and he ended up flipping to defensive back at Old Dominion. He's really been a major factor in special teams. So you get a kid like that, whether he's going to the SEC, ACC, you know, we don't have a Pac-12 after this year anymore, but whatever school he would want to go to, it would be, I think, behoove of them if they used him in special teams as well, whether you decide him at running back, receiver, or even defensive back, if that was to be something he translated to at some point.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, good input from the pro Matt Hatfield. So look, I want to thank you all for joining us. This episode took a little bit longer than normal, but these are some. I mean, this is the time of year we've got 8 games behind us, so we've got a lot more information. But these games are very critical. So I appreciate the thorough analysis and feedback from you all. Look, this is the time of year where it starts to really get a little cool, and football really starts to heat up. So I just want to thank Jay Gholson, Jason Sterling, my man Matt Hatfield, and of course my co-host Kirk Hilliard. This has been the Kirk and Byrd Show with our weekly picks. We are out.